Well, what a failure to defend the government's record, because, of course, we know that they don't have a record to defend.
Yeah, that's right.
And what we see here is the failure of the coalition to actually prepare for government. Under Tony Abbott, the coalition was turned into the no-alition. They just said no to everything, and they didn't do the hard yards that you need to do in opposition in policy development, which you can then take into government and into implementation, something that this opposition is doing right now in leading the national policy and ideas debates. But Tony Abbott, of course, had a plan to get into government but no plan to govern. And 6 months after his demise, history is repeating itself. Malcolm Turnbull had a plan to defeat Tony Abbott, but no plan for what happened afterwards. He is a man who is at war with his own party. But more importantly than that, he's at war with himself, at war with the views that he has held on climate change, on marriage equality, on cities, on planning, on all of these issues. He talks a lot, but he has nothing to say. This government is an ideas vacuum. That is why Mr Abbott and now Mr Turnbull have struggled when it comes to having an economic plan, and there is nowhere where that is more obvious than in the area of infrastructure. Under this government, public sector infrastructure investment has fallen by 20%. It has collapsed. Private sector infrastructure investment has fallen by even more. This mob have cancelled every single public transport infrastructure project that was not already under construction. Every single one. And when it comes to where the money went that they took out of public transport, the projects that it went to, you look at the East-West Link in Victoria, a project that they still trumpet, which had a benefit of 45 cents for every dollar that was invested. And it's no wonder that the new minister with his training wheels on had to come into the chamber last night and correct the record, because he gave an answer yesterday that was not right when it comes to Victorian infrastructure. I was a minister for 6 years and never had to do that. Never had to do that. Because, of course, we know that just today the Victorian government has submitted the business plan again to the government on the Melbourne Metro project. We say that's the #1 priority for Victoria. Victorians say it's the #1 priority. They voted for the Andrews Labor government because it was the #1 priority, and yet this mob want to continue with that. Then we have Perth-Greatlink that's been knocked over in the courts. And of course WestConnex that the minister raises, that was costed at $10 billion, but now is worth $16.8 billion. $16.8 billion.
Order.
We were promised cranes on the skyline and bulldozers working on new projects within a year. Well, the only thing on the skyline that we've seen is Bronwyn Bishop's helicopter. That's all we saw in the first 2 years. And when it comes to the bulldozers, what we've seen is bulldust. Bulldust from this mob's magical infrastructure re-announcement tour, running around the country claiming projects as their own because they don't have a record to point to. The only hole they've dug, we know, is the one that they buried the member for Warringah in. That is the only hole that they dug, although they did dig a hole in Palmerston on the Friday for the hospital, but they filled it in on the Saturday, the day later. That lasted just 1 day. And there's no area the failure comes with regard to cities. They appointed a minister, then sacked him 2 months later, now haven't even bothered. Their entire urban policy agenda has gone to dust, just like all of their policies when it comes to infrastructure, just like their lack of an economic plan. Now, Ben Franklin said by failing
Order.
to prepare,
The member's
you are
time has
preparing
expired.
to